That's me. There's a picture of me. I work in product marketing, which essentially is a department that informs and educates our current customers on what's happening in the product, how to get the best use out of the product. It's a fun job. But outside of Bloomerang, I am kind of a Renaissance man. I enjoy like graphic design and visual media and all sorts of tech stuff. Played drums, a big animal lover as well. I got 2 pets at home that I take care of. Rocco, if you've been in any past webinars with me, you might have even seen him in the past. So, but that's just a little bit about me. Excited to help you all and just give you some tips on, and just for set the record straight, although I work for Bloomerang and we are going to be looking at Bloomerang today, these practices and we're going to be looking at the information that we are covering today. It doesn't matter which CRM you have or which nonprofit tools you use. These are just some really good data points to show off and add to your arsenal. But we will be taking a look at Bloomerang at the end of the webinar today and kind of walking through some of the features we have. So here's today's agenda. We're going to look at what donor retention is and kind of just the equation for how to find donor retention. Then we're going to look at why donors lapse. Oh my gosh, I need to record this webinar. That'd probably be helpful. Let me go ahead and start this recording. Let's see. One second. Oh, already in progress. I think Diana kicked off. So thank you. I was going to say, maybe we're already going. So perfect. So then we're going to take a look at 5 donor retention strategies and then also how Bloomerang can help. And I'm going to try to save about 10 minutes at the end, maybe 15 minutes for Q&A for everyone. Okay, first I want to launch a poll for everyone. I want to try to keep this interactive today. So here we go for the launching the poll. Do you know your organization's donor retention rate? So right offhand, what is your current donor retention rate? So yes, no, and then I put a maybe option. Maybe you saw it, maybe it was like a year ago you looked at it, maybe it's been a long time, or maybe you're not quite sure of it. How many participants we got today? So I'm gonna wait about 1:31, so let's give a few more seconds for there. I love asking this question because with today's topic being so relevant to it, I love to just see kind of the percentage of our nonprofit friends and where they're at with donor retention and how quickly they have it available to their teams. All right, so 3, 2, 1. All right, I'm gonna end that poll now. Okay, let's share that across the board. So 36, so about a third of people here in this webinar today said yes. And then majority said no. So not sure what their donor retention numbers are. So that's why we're here to help identify that today. But this is an important metric to know. That it says a lot about your organization's fundraising health and gives you a pretty good indicator of really the success that you could be having with your nonprofit and your fundraising goals. So what is donor retention? So mainly, we're going to be looking at these numbers from the Fundraising Effectiveness Project, which you can see those logos down at the bottom. All of these organizations, including Bloomerang, but other CRMs, other fundraising tech, and you can see AFP is in there as well, have collaborated and brought together millions of transactions. So, I mean, we're talking huge sets of data. So more than 20,000 organizations, almost $80 billion worth of donations since 2005 to try to find trends in giving in the nonprofit space. And what they found is pretty amazing. But before I jump into those numbers, here's just that number for what we talk about with donor retention, just so it's crystal clear. Your donor retention percentage is the number of your returning donors in year 2 over the number of all donors in your first year. So typically we look at donor retention across 2 years. I have seen people do it on like a quarterly basis, even a monthly basis, but generally when we're talking about your donor retention percentage, it's a 365-day period. So for example, you would take for your current set, you'd do all your donors in, let's say if you did your 2021 example, you would do all your donors in 2020, and then all of those donors that returned again in 2021. And that percentage would be your donor retention percentage. But this is what we found from the Fundraising Effectiveness Project. And so you can see these leaky buckets. So the amount of donors that are kind of slipping by, that are leaking from your organization. So these are the 2021 numbers. The 2022 numbers, I don't quite have on hand yet, but these are some solid numbers I wanted to rely on today. So, but you can see the average across the board. So just average donor retention rate in the nonprofit space is 43%. So that's for any type of donor. But if you look specifically at the first time donors, so those that gave for the very first time to the organization, the likelihood or the percent of those that would give again the following year is only 19%. So if you think about that, if you have 100 donors give in 1 year, you're only going to have 19 of them give that again the following year. But what we found from this data is repeat donors, that if someone is to give again, their likelihood to give is going to be 60%, so almost triple. So if you can find a way to get someone to give that second gift, if they are considered a repeat donor, their likelihood to be giving again almost triples. So here at Bloomerang, we put a really big emphasis on cultivating first-time donors. And so in many cases, when we're talking about donor retention, while we are talking about repeat donors, I do think a lot of the focus is on retaining those first-time donors. Because if you can bump this number up, if you can retain more than 20% of your first-time donors, man, sky's the limit. You can really do some great things. But in general, if you can just bump your donor retention rate in general up a few ticks, you're really going to see the benefits. So here's why it matters outside just the numbers or outside just the fundraising aspect, but it's typically easier and cheaper to retain a donor than to acquire a new one. So one, you can spend fewer marketing dollars. So in those efforts on trying to acquire new donors, you can spend more time on securing those legacy gifts, access to more committed volunteers. If you can retain donors year over year, hopefully you're building those relationships in a way to where you can have readily engaged donors for capital campaigns, volunteering work. And honestly, it's just more fun to have donors around longer. It's more invigorating to work with long-term donors. Get to have that back and forth, build that actual relationship, and check in. So these are just I call the fringe benefits of donor retention. There's clearly some fiscal, benefits of retaining donors, but there's lots of things that can roll up with donor retention. But here's a really scary slide with a lot of math and numbers on it. But this is really just highlighting what can happen to your, really just the grand total of your fundraising efforts with a 10% increase in retention. So on the left side of this table, below the orange, this is a nonprofit that operates at a 41% retention rate. And on the right is someone who is the same nonprofit but has bumped to 51%. So you can see, for example, their average gift, starts at 200 and it goes down for 10 years. So year 2, year 3, you can see it jumps in total from 451, and then they're only retaining then 203 of that. So of that same donor base. Basically, look at these bottom numbers. So just with a 10% uptick in retention, you're looking at $450,000. So this is based on this particular number for a nonprofit. So it may be different for your nonprofit and your fundraising goals. But all this to say, maybe it's not 10%, but 5 or 6 or even 7% increase in your donor retention can be big numbers over the course of a year. So you might not see it in a year-to-year difference. You might go, oh, it's not that big of a deal from year 2 to year 3, but over the course of time, you're also getting that longevity. Look how at year 10, we're basically bottoming out from those original donors. We're down to 2 donors. Whereas if we're improving by 10%, we're gaining an extra 4 years of donors in those relationships. So food for thought on this slide, really. So we're talking about donor retention, and it's important to talk about why donors lapse. So how can we catch them at that point of lapse, or how can we diagnose what's going on and why people are not giving again? And so again, from this research and from some of the studies Bloomerang has performed and been able to analyze. So although this is an older study, I see it's 2001. These principles have remained true and what we've seen in our customer base. So why donors tend to stop giving. So here at 5%, thought the charity didn't need them. 5%, 8% said no info on the money or the funds were used. 9% said no memory of supporting. 13% said they never got thanked. 18% said poor service or communication. And then these final three. And I want to point out the ones in green compared to the ones here in black. All the ones in green are something that you as a nonprofit can control. So for example, never getting thanked or poor communication or no information on how the funds were used. These are, I wouldn't say simple problems to fix, but I would say they're straightforward. If most donors are saying, so you total these up, you're having a large chunk of your donor base is not giving due to just not having enough info or not having enough cultivation. So yes, 36%, 50%, 16%, they're giving because either they can't afford, want to give to another organization, or there was someone has passed and is just not giving again. So those are, I would say, outside of your control. It's something that's a little bit tougher to diagnose, but I think it's really interesting that these are some very simple, straightforward problems that just by focusing in on these, we can increase donor retention. So on the flip side, why do donors stay? We looked at why they lapse. We understand those problems. They're fairly, kind of point blank as far as just communication. Why do donors keep giving? So it's kind of on the opposite side of the coin. So donors perceive the organization to be effective. They know what to expect with each interaction. We're going to talk about that in a few slides. They got a timely thank you. The donor received opportunities to make their views known. They felt like they were able to contribute their own voice. It feels like they're part of that cause. They feel like his or her involvement is appreciated. And this last point, which leads into what we're going to be talking about, but the donor receives information on who is being helped. So I think point 7, really all of these come back to communication and cultivating that donor relationship. So it's not about necessarily like the amount you're asking or maybe the avenue, but it's really just about how you, after the donation, how are you thanking and how are you following up with those donors? That's what the key to this retention. This is a really interesting study. So this is a 2021 study at the Lilly School, and they interviewed what they called like hyper loyal donors. So donors that were giving consistently to their respective nonprofits, and 52% of these hyper loyal donors said they give again, they continue to give over and over again because the stories and experiences shared by the people my gifts have helped. So the majority of donors that said, hey, I keep giving this organization for years and years, it's because I see the story and the experience of how my gift is helping. And then not to even brush these off, but the other percentages of why they keep giving, they get frequent updates about the programs and services. Again, with the impact and the heartfelt thank you, and an educational interactive webinar series related to the organization's mission. So just ways to basically stay informed. I think you can sum all these up with keeping the donor informed about what their gift is doing and what their next step is. That's really, I think, the best way to kind of distill this information. So looking at all these slides, really to jump into these strategies, what are some steps we can take? What are some strategies we can walk away with today? So one is segmenting. So in order to give that kind of personal touch, you have to segment your audiences. So I want to look at really a success story with one of our customers. This doesn't look like a lot of work, but just some minor changes. So this was one of our customers here, and they had 3 different letters that they sent out. And notice there was not much changes, but they did change whether they were going to be sending to a monthly donor, a one-time donor, and I believe they sent to another type of donor, monthly donor with a different pay level or a different donation level. So they separate these into 3 different segments, and they base it off of other letters where they weren't segmenting. They generate, I'm sorry, this was letters, this email campaign, over 17,000 from just this one campaign, simply by separating the emails into different segments. So this was not anything more than just segmenting their audience. So instead of just reply all to everyone in your donation base or to send to everybody in your database all the time, segment those communications and add in words that are key to the segment you're sending this mail to. So some examples of segments. So if you're curious, well, where do I even start? How do I segment my database? How do I segment my donors? This is what we really recommend here at Bloomerang. Find your first-time donors, find monthly donors, lapsed donors, which are the donors that gave maybe last year, have not given again this year, volunteers that are in your database who have never donated, donors who have shared feedback. I know at times maybe we're scared to reach out to volunteers because they're giving, part of their time. Same with donors who maybe give negative feedback or positive feedback, but reaching out to those that interacting with your organization, and again, long-term donors. So save this slide. Again, we're recording this and we're going to send out all these materials after, but write these notes down. These are some really crucial segments for campaigns in the future. Second strategy is personal touch. So not just segmenting your donors into different buckets, but once you segment them, how are you making it a personal approach? How are you making it feel like you're having a one-on-one interaction? And I have a great example. So here's an example of one of our, this is a local nonprofit here in Indianapolis called Outreach Indy, but here's an example of email they sent. This is from the director, so one of the executive directors, so Mike. He reached out with just a personal email. So it doesn't have to be a mass email. If you have the time, you have the bandwidth to be able to task some of your team to be able to send those personal emails. Maybe it's above a certain threshold, or maybe it's just your monthly donors. But what's really cool is they had a link to what's called a Grativid video. So Bloomerang integrates with this service. Think about like a Cameo for your nonprofit. So you can send like a personal thank you message. You can see right here, he's sending just a quick thanks. And it's essentially like a quick, 10-second video saying thank you for your donation. It makes it feel personal, showing you that, hey, we took the time to thank you. This goes huge for donor retention. So whether it's a personal email, a personal phone call, or like a video message like Grativid, that's a great way to ensure that your donors feel loved and feel appreciated. And to emphasize phone calls, it doesn't have to be, anything fancy. It doesn't have to be, this highly super big production value of a thank you video sent to every donor. Bloomerang's research shows that just calling a donors, and I would say even attempting to call donors, makes a huge difference. So this is not having an hour-long conversation with each donor. This is simply calling a donor, maybe even just leaving a voicemail saying, hey, Mike, thanks for your donation. Really glad you were able to give to this cause, and this provided X for Y. So the research that we have shown is that a first-time donor who gets that personal thank you call within 48 hours, they are 4 times more likely to give that second gift. And even more so, a call from a board member within the first 24 hours has shown that they will increase that gift by almost 40%. So a thank you call, even if it's just a voicemail, can go a long way. And I'm going to kind of speed through these slides, but here's just a breakdown of what Bloomerang's data has shown is, so no phone call, the percentage retained, and this is Bloomerang data, so from our customers, but after a donation, and here we can see the number of phone calls within the first 90 days. So no phone call, only 33% retained. Just one phone call, we're upticking 8% in retention, which is, as we saw before, 8% can make a huge difference. And then if you have more than one phone call, so we try to emphasize 3 touches or 3 interactions with your your donor after they give. But if you can do more than one phone call, we're looking at almost 60% retention. Pretty wild. And here again, this is the number of days until the second gift. So not only does the likelihood of giving, but even the how fast they give again. So with no phone call, we're looking at 260 days before the next gift. Whereas if there's more than one phone call, we are dropping that number by less than 2 months for their second gift to arrive. And again, this is just the dollar amount increase. So those that got more than one phone call, they're increasing their gift by median gift of $100. So pretty cool. And just as an overall scope for this slide is there's phone calls, personal emails, and in-person interactions. But notice just the weight of a phone call. So obviously the personal emails works in some sense. We have almost a 10% uptick in that retention, but simply just calling and leaving a voicemail can have a almost 17, 18% increase in that retention. So pretty fascinating. All right, so the third retention strategy is cultivation. So we've talked about segmenting those groups, adding that personal touch to make sure the donor feels thanked. This third one is more about it's an element of personal touch, but it's mainly about giving the donor the next steps, and ensuring that they know what they're getting into when they donate to your organization, and how what they should be expecting in the days to come. So just as a really quick example, here's like a thank you email from College Mentor for Kids. I love how they said, thank you for investing. So just simple changes like that, instead of just having a bland, hey, thanks for your donation, or donation received, or just, receipt for donation. Just putting a little bit of effort behind those subject lines. And then what I love here, I highlighted, is just the next step. I think a lot of us wouldn't even notice this sentence here, but this can make a difference in the life cycle of the donor, is saying, hey, a tax letter with details of your gift will be sent in the next month. Giving that donor, okay, I have that next step. I know they're going to be reaching out. They won't feel lost, like I don't know what to expect from this nonprofit. I'm not sure what the next step is for me. So just small changes. And this is another example I love. This is Girls Inc. of Indianapolis. On the right, they send these little welcome kits to their first-time donors. On the left, they have this letter that one of their development directors, or the president of development, signed. So Madeline just wrote her name, and she said, we're grateful for you. Adding, again, that personal touch. But what I love on this right side is they have like a little flower pot, kind of like those like seed packets. So you could like water them. I think you just kind of throw them out in your garden and they grow. I love that idea. It's unique. It kind of shows, hey, here's kind of our culture and our mission of Girls Inc. and how your gift is going to help. So it's a really unique way to emphasize your mission and cultivate that relationship with the donor. So get creative with your cultivation efforts is how basically what I'm trying to say with all this is, add some personality to letters, really show off your mission and how that gift is going to be working. So instead of just sending receipts or just sending, a list of their donation items. So fourth strategy is feedback. And this one I think is overlooked quite a bit in the nonprofit space, but be curious about donor motivation and soliciting feedback. Before I jump in, I actually have a really fun poll. I'm curious, this kind of goes in hand with cultivation, but let's see, I'll stop sharing that. There we go. So I want everyone to think back to their most recent gift to another nonprofit. What did you receive after donating? So maybe not to your own nonprofit, but to another organization. What happened after you gave that donation? Did you get just a transaction receipt, nothing too fancy? Was it like a personalized gift acknowledgement? Perhaps it was auto-generated, but at least it was personalized. It had your name in there, maybe it had like the donation amount. Did you get a personal email, so from just one person? Did you receive a phone call, a personalized video thank you? And then how many just received nothing? So I'll let that go for about 30 seconds or so. I bring this up, I think it's a really, it's interesting because when we take stock of what we have done or what we've received and why we give again to other organizations, it seems pretty straightforward what we can do to improve our own fundraising strategies. I know I gave to an organization just a few months ago, and nothing came of it. I sent, it was just an online donation form, and then, I think I got just a receipt, but I didn't get any sort of like email from their organization. I never got any sort of like follow-up email. So I'm going to end that poll. 3, 2, 1. I'll show those results. There we go. But anyway, so it's I send that email or that donation, and then nothing comes of it, and it makes me, wonder: A, did they get my donation, and B, nothing is enticing me and really reeling me in to want to give again. So other than just me being motivated by my initial donation. All right, so those were the results. So vast majority said they got some sort of like auto-generated kind of personalized gift acknowledgement, which is great. But really fascinating, even just 10% said nothing. So I think that lines up with, even just doing some of the most small changes in your fundraising strategy, just like even just sending a thank you could go a long way. So we're seeing that there's still nonprofits out there that nothing is happening after a donation. Very cool. Thanks for doing that poll. All right, feedback though. I want to talk about this. So this gets overlooked, is giving that space for your donors, to offer their input, offer their feedback, and for you as an organization to listen. So a great example is in Bloomerang, we have these engagement surveys. I'm going to show this off here in a second. But these get sent out automatically based on where a donor is in their life cycle. So if there's a new donor survey, there's an existing one, and there's a lapsed donor survey. So here in this example, here's a lapsed donor survey. It gets sent out to donors who gave once and then they never gave again after a year passed. And we send the survey, and hey, we saw you no longer giving to X, nonprofit. Why'd you stop giving? And this allows them to give feedback directly to your organization on why they felt like they could stop giving, whether it's just, again, maybe they couldn't afford it, maybe they switched to a different charity, or maybe they just weren't thanked appropriately. But whether it is through Bloomerang and our engagement surveys, or if you want to send through another platform, a survey, or even just through phone calls and just get that feedback directly, if you can, getting that data and those answers from donors is huge. So you can understand where to focus in. So maybe after doing some surveys, you realize, okay, most people are just saying, their priorities have changed. Maybe most people are just saying that they didn't feel like they were thanked appropriately. So it can really provide some insight into donor retention. So I highly recommend getting some form of feedback for your donor base. Lastly, this is, I think, the last cap of retention, but it's culminating all these things. So make sure you include personal touch and segmenting, but ask earlier. I think in many cases we are afraid to go ahead and ask again. I know when I used to work at a nonprofit, a lot of times we wouldn't reach out to someone within the first year. So we would see a donor, and we thought, well, we don't want to tap them out on donations, so we better wait. So we would keep them out of communications for a long time. But from our research here at Bloomerang, what we have noticed is the vast majority of donors who ever give again will do so in that first 18 months. But point out this number here is 45% will do in the first 6 months. So capitalize on those. So don't be afraid to ask earlier. It never hurts to ask again. So especially as they are still interested and excited about your organization, and you're cultivating that relationship and you're showing where the donation goes, maybe set a task for yourself. Okay, they donated today, in 6 months, we're going to follow up. Or even earlier, hey, we're going to send them another solicitation right at the 6 month mark. But don't be afraid to ask earlier, because donors, while we may think they're tapped out, they do have that capacity to give. All right, so I want to wrap up this slide deck with a sample communication timeline. So this is like a 90-day sample of cultivating that donor relationship. So day 0, boom, that's when the first donation is received. Notice by day 2, have that thank you call logged. And then here we have some examples of how to get those touches built into that first-time donor. So maybe by day 5, can you put together a letter that's just personally signed by your CEO or your executive director? Day 10, see if you can send a survey. Have that lined up and scheduled. So after they give first, get their feedback on what they liked about the donation experience or what they liked about your organization that brought them here. And then day 10 through 70 are really windowed by email newsletters. So send them 3 emails, letting them know that your organization's active, that you're doing things in the community. Let them see that you're working and that their donation is providing that funding for that work. And sprinkled in there, we have like day 25, a tour invitation. See if you can invite them. I myself, I went on an e-tour or like a virtual tour last year, and I had a blast. It was like an animal sanctuary, and although we didn't do it in person, just being able to walk around and kind of see animals, and it seems kind of like mind blowing now to think that why would I want to do an animal sanctuary virtually? But hey, we did, and I actually had a lot of fun, and it made me want to give it the organization again. So tour invitations, whether virtual or in person, is a great way just to add a touch to those donors. And then again, we have stewardship pieces and another stewardship phone call. And then notice we have by day 85. So not even 6 months, but within that 90-day window. Ask for that second gift and increase that gift. Don't be afraid. So I want to show off a donor retention success story. And I love this organization. It's here in Indianapolis called Coburn Place. I have some friends that work there too, but they are Bloomerang customers, and before Bloomerang, their retention rate was at 35%. And after checking, I just checked it recently, their donor retention is at 48%. So they've increased by 13%, which is huge. So let's see. And what I want is the quote they had here is, the quality of constituent communication is definitely improved. We're able to record notes. See who donors are and their histories of the organization. And then here, it's led to better segmenting and personalizing of the donor experience. So Julia at Coburn Place, she just mentioned that since switching to Bloomerang, and I would argue really just ensuring you have a dedicated donor CRM where you can be able to segment your donors and personalize their donation experience can go a long way with donor retention. Okay, so we're almost at the 37-minute mark. I want to jump into Bloomerang and just kind of show off a sample of this donor life cycle and show off some features of Bloomerang. And then we'll have some time for questions too. So let's just jump over to here. Okay. So here we have the dashboard in Bloomerang. If you have not seen Bloomerang before, or maybe it's been a long time, you might have noticed that the dashboard's been refreshed a bit. There's some new elements here, but we really try to make first-time donors a priority. So notice on this right, we have our donor calls. So which donors have given for first time and to log those calls. So they have a phone number on hand, and I can simply click on one of these and kind of see some details about that donor and go ahead and I can log a call and create an interaction or add that to their timeline. But let's start at the beginning of the donor life cycle, and that's at the donation itself. So I want to show off one of our customers, this Humane Society of Macomb, and I love what they've done with their donation form. So here's their site, and they have a donate meow. Perfect. Love the pun. You click on this donation button, it pulls up this little modal. Already has some suggested amounts here. So 29, 50, and 100. Really slick donation form. They can either do one time or monthly. And just for just for transparency, these are even though it says securely processed by Kindful, Kindful is under the Bloomerang family, and so one option you have with Bloomerang is you can have Kindful fundraising tools. So this is what some of those fundraising tools is, these really unique and kind of DIY donation forms here. So you can click continue on the one-time gift. You can enter your card details, first name, last name, capture that information, and then go ahead and donate. And I love they even customize the donate meow on this page too. So really fun experience, makes it just a little bit, adds a little bit of fun and personality to the donation experience, has all their branded colors, looks great. So in this sample, they're going to donate. All the information is then going to get pushed back into Bloomerang. And you would then, if they're a first-time donor, they'll get popped right into this first-time donor calls list. And so just as a workflow, if this was to be updated right away, then that donor would pop in. Let's just say it's here, Ryan Reynolds here. Maybe I want to have a follow-up immediately. So maybe I'm not the person that's going to be making the phone calls. Maybe there's a separate team or a separate person that's going to be performing those. I can convert this right to a task. So I can say, all right, let's log this as a task for someone else. So I could assign this to someone else on my team. Maybe instead it'll be impact and cultivation. And I want them to follow up via phone. I can maybe type the notes like, first-time donor, loves chatting on the phone. Who knows? You can also add attachments. You can see the donation details here, and I can save that task. And notice now this gets added to the task window down here. So I can see that right now it's assigned to John, and it's due by tomorrow for him. So really easy way just to have a workflow for first-time donors and making sure they get that call logged quickly. So now let's go into more of the retention of those lapsed donors. We were talking about how can we recapture some of those lapsed donors. So I love that Bloomerang is right on the front page. We have your donor retention. So that poll earlier, maybe if you were a Bloomerang customer, so you knew your donor retention because you've logged in, you see the dashboard every day. What's really cool is you can click on each side of this graph here. So here's my retained donors. So this highlighted portion, and then my lapsed donors. So I can just click through. And now I'm going to pull up a report so I can see a whole list of all my lapsed households in my database. And if I wanted to, I can click through each of these and see their giving profile. So for example, for Acme, what's really neat about their constituent profiles, you can see a giving summary right away, and they have an engagement level here. So this is how engaged are they? So this is an algorithm that was built by Bloomerang based off of nonprofit research, but it brings together all their interactions, all their donation history, whether they visit your website, how much they've engaged with your nonprofit, and it tallies it into an engagement level of cold, cool, warm, hot, and on fire. So it's not just based on how much they give, but also just, do they open emails? Do they, how many times have you logged an interaction with them? So this is a really quick way just to get a glimpse of your donors' engagement levels in Bloomerang. But here we have our list of lapsed donors. And let's say I want to send segmented email to this list of households. So I want to do like a lapsed campaign, let's say. I could simply save this as a report. So I could do save and keep editing. I'm going to call this lapsed campaign 2022. And now let's say we want to send an email to them. I can go to my emails over here on the left. And then I already built an email template here called retention campaign. So I'll click retention campaign. And then from these three tabs, I can design an email right here in Bloomerang. I don't have to go anywhere else to design the email, and I can even link in our donation form. I'll click on filter. And then let's say I want to go I want to send this to my lapsed donors. Well, I have that report saved, so all I have to do is add one filter. So add the filter is in a constituent report. We just saved that report. And I'm going to look at my 2022 lapsed campaign. There we go. And I'm going to hit OK. And there we go. Notice there's 37 constituents. I know the report said 24 households. This is just showing the number of households. So if I go back to households here, 24 households. So Bloomerang, you can filter things and email based on either the households, so the groupings of people, or the individuals within. But then I could just simply hit save and preview. And it's going to automatically do some work. It's going to find the valid email address. It's going to skip an email address, so either bad, have already opted out of communication. So you don't have to worry about or sweat on, oh my gosh, maybe they opted out. Do I need to add some fancy filters? Nope, Bloomerang just does that automatically. You can even see who skipped and why. So for example, okay, Emily here, she opted out, whereas these are just bad email addresses that aren't going to work, and we'll save you from having to send to those. So you can get a quick preview of the email, what it's going to look like. You can even see how from each donor, what it will look like. So make sure the merge fields and whatnot, donations amount are going to look okay. So you can kind of do a final check. And then you can either send or schedule this email for later if you choose to do so. So let's say I just want to send this now. And then what I can do, and you can actually do schedule for, I'll show you this real quick. So frequency, maybe I want to send this just once and set this for tomorrow. I'll say tomorrow at 11 a.m. Now that's scheduled. So now if I'm back on my email list page, and right here I can see this is going to send once, and it's going to send tomorrow at 11 a.m. Eastern. So that's a super easy way. Did that in less than 5 minutes of finding a segment of my lapsed donors, adding it to my email campaign, and having that scheduled to go out tomorrow. So right there, we're segmenting a list, within the email copy and your donation form. That's where you can really personalize and add that personal touch. But I want to show off the other strategy of feedback. So if I go to my emails here again, we have engagement surveys up here at the top. And so here I have my lapsed donor survey, my existing donor survey, and my new donor survey. So in my demo database, I don't have my responses here yet, but if I did have responses, I would see a graph of just their answers and their survey responses up here. But what I can do is click on my lapsed donor survey. I can build out an email, just like any other email editor here. And essentially I can send these survey questions, and like we saw in that one slide, they'll get a list of like, some clickable options on feedback for your organization. So this is a very set and forget type of feature. You can simply just set this up and then click activate, and then these will send. So for the lapsed donor, for example, Bloomerang will automatically send this out once a donor has lapsed past a year of their first gift. So you don't have to worry about, oh my gosh, like we need to send this out and check this every day. Nope, you just set it up and it is good to go. And again, it will validate whether the emails are good enough to send to. So that is a very quick overview of the life cycle and some retention strategy and tools we have in Bloomerang. So I know we have just about 15 minutes left, and I've been seeing a lot of activity in chat, and Diana's probably been helping a ton today. So thank you, Diana. But let's just take a look at some of the FAQ and the Q&A in the chat section. And I'm going to keep Bloomerang up. So if people have any more questions, I'm happy to answer them live today. Okay, yeah, Mary, can we see the segmentation list again? Were you referring to the different segmented lists that we tend to enjoy here at Bloomerang, or is this the actual creating that report? I can do both. Here was the list of segments there. So our favorite segments were first-time donors, monthly donors, lapsed donors, volunteers who've never donated, donors who have shared feedback, social media followers who interact with you, and long-term donors. I know in Bloomerang we can capture a lot of this information and be able to pull those by certain fields and reports. As far as other CRMs, I'm sure there's ways of finding these segments. Let's see. Should an ask be included in the 3 email newsletters during? Great question. I don't think it hurts. I know we talked about asking earlier in that 45-day window. So I don't see a problem with adding an ask, although I think back to this communication plan. Let's pull that up again. I do think working towards and having a set day that you want to send that second gift appeal is a good strategy. So strictly keeping that 10 or that day 20 to day 70 as more cultivation, I think this is a solid plan. However, if you do want to bump that up, maybe you buy that second email newsletter, you do have options. I think it never hurts to have some form of a donation option in any of the newsletters. Obviously, maybe make the focus of those newsletters on something else, or make the click-through action, the call to action, something else. But I would say by that second gift appeal, by that day 85, it should be clear that it is a second call for that gift. But perhaps in the second and third email, as you're giving some more information, or maybe you are giving some more insight into your organization's mission, still including an option to give. That way donors have to go looking for it. Never hurts. Let's see. Yes, Steve. Yeah. In light of changing use pattern of phone, is this something we could still focus on? So this data is, it's still recent. So I would say yes. I know that overall phone calls are less of a favorite of a communication medium. But I think it's a super simple way to just show that you're trying, and you're trying to outreach with donors. So I know I said it before, but the phone call, again, the research didn't show whether they picked up or whether we left a voicemail, but the research just said that we logged a call. So I do know that perhaps, I don't know if I have data on how texting occurs, or how texting impacts those stewardship and those relationships, but all I know is that phone calls, they do work. So if you can log a personal phone call within those first 2 days, you're most likely going to see some increase in retention. Great question, though. I think it's always worth investigating. Our organization has 40,000 donors. I'm going into a new role with the org, which is a major gift officer. Any more tips how to engage with higher end donors? Great question. I think just the number one thing is segmenting. So obviously, you know the threshold, so it's 40,000 donors. See if you can break it up by any other. Maybe it's by the campaign they gave to you. And I would say the personal touch too. So perhaps it is doing those tour invitations and having like a personal one-on-one. We have some other Bloomerang Academy and some other webinars on, I believe, on major gifts. So I would highly recommend you check out some of the resources there. But as far as the high-end donors, I do think it's the personal touch, and like we saw in those hyper loyal donors, is just knowing that their gift is doing something. So maybe it's a highly personalized letter, and it is an impact story of what their donation has done. Really go into detail of what good has come from their gift. I know it's a kind of a wishy-washy answer, but there's obviously a lot of strategies with higher end donors. But I think these principles apply to any level of donor, whether they're large gifts or medium or small gifts. Great questions. All right, I'm gonna try to look through chat too, see if I've missed anything else. Let's see. I'm going to start from here. Let's see. How often should we send surveys to existing donors to keep them engaged? In organizations, show them we want their feedback once a year, less often. Great question. So with our surveys, they are based off of, I want to say, let's say for new donors, it sends, and Diana maybe weigh in if you remember the exact numbers. For the new donor survey, those get sent out in the first 90 days. And then for existing donors, let's see here. I'm going to go to our help articles here. So just for the sake of it.
Yeah, for our existing donor surveys, we try to make sure that donors don't get a survey within 6 months of the last time they got a survey. But if they haven't been surveyed in 6 months, that can trigger another survey for them.
Perfect. I also want a little plug for our knowledge base for our existing Bloomerang. This is super helpful. So whether you've been a Bloomerang customer for one day or several, we have a ton of help articles in our knowledge base. So if you go to our solutions portal, every question under the sun can be answered in here. So if you're a Bloomerang customer, but yes, so part of the work is done with our engagement surveys to ensure that they're not getting spammed with surveys in their inbox. Great question. Oh yeah, back to the slide of why donors lapse. Absolutely. There we go. Yes. I love this slide. I think it just shows that even though it's not necessarily the majority of the answer, there's some very practical steps that nonprofits can take to ensure that they're retaining donors, that they're making donors feel appreciated. Let's see. Any other questions on Bloomerang or even just retention strategies? We have a few minutes, and otherwise we'll probably just end a few minutes early today, but want to make sure everyone has space and get questions out there if they do. Perfect. Thanks, Diana. Okay, well, I'm going to send one more poll for everyone before we head out. As we've seen Bloomerang today, if you are interested in learning more about Bloomerang, just hit that yes, please button. This is a no pressure survey. If it's a not right now, that's totally fine, but this will just put you on our short list of people to contact. We'll have our team follow up and provide a personal demo. This is not signing up for anything today. This is just simply to get more information on Bloomerang and how it can help you and your organization. So I'll leave that up until we close out today. But if there's no other questions, I hope everyone has a really great week, really fine Tuesday. It's gorgeous here in Indianapolis today. Hopefully it's gorgeous where you're from. Otherwise, yeah, have a great week. I'll let this just ride out for the last few minutes while people are closing out. But thanks for attending. Yeah, love seeing all this interaction today. Very cool. You all are too kind. I'll see you all at the next Nonprofit Success webinar. Should be in just a few weeks. Oh, we're going live with Bloomerang soon. Awesome, Ford. Love to see that. And again, we'll be sending this recording and these materials out here shortly. So you'll get all these slides and whatnot in your inbox. All right, that's 5 minutes still. So thanks again. Catch y'all later.